Good evening. We had a little bit of technical difficulty there right at the start, but I think we've got it all under control now. The stream quality should be okay, but I am dealing with some very, very heavy rainfall at the moment. In spirit of the series, even though surprisingly enough we're actually not looking at any rain throughout the weekend session for tonight, is doesn't seem to need much help inducing the slide, as we've got a lot of drivers off the track left and right. Labe is our current top runner in the Aston Martin, but they have gone into the pit lane on board with Mansueto now. And welcome in everyone who has tuned in. Round 2 of the TRC Posh British GT3. I'd say it's a mini-season. It's kind of right in between the size of a regular season and a mini-season, but here at Oulton Park, down through the first of the 2 chicanes. And Sweato getting a bit squirrely. Some drivers showing some disdain in the chat leading up to tonight's race. Not so much a big fan of this track are many of the drivers. But Labe and Mansueto, Labe actually with a sizable lead, at least in terms of pace compared to the rest of the field. We'll see if Labe is back out. No, he is not yet. Wagner goes second fastest in the Bentley. And there is a theme with the paint schemes on these cars. They should mostly all be British Racing Green. There are a few people who have deviated from that plan. It's not required. It's just to keep on theme of British Grand Touring cars. Absolutely flying on the limit of the grip before coming into the banked hairpin of the old shell corner. And then the first of the 2 chicanes. Drivers in the Bentley have really shown some expression saying that it's not really a track that suits the Bentley too well. Says that they are driving a boat that doesn't quite fit on the track. That does not mean that it does not have any pace. It's Wagner in the Bentley, currently the closest competitor, at least in terms of lap time and free practice, to the Jaguar of Labe. Also, Daharo making an appearance with us again. It's Daharo and the Jaguar up to 11th. And Karim as well in the V12 Aston. Thank you to those of you who have tuned into the stream, and thank you to those of you drivers who may be watching the stream later on. Wagner still our fastest of the drivers that are out on track. Bit of racing here just in free practice. Who is that up ahead? That is the number 16 of Mikey. And the Bentley definitely showing a pace advantage over the Aston Martin. Despite the cloud cover on track, we are not expecting any rain throughout this race weekend, as I have quite a heavy amount of rain just outside and hitting that windowsill. It may be making some noise. If anybody's in the chat, if you can hear it, please let me know. But it is extremely loud, the rain just outside my window. Just a couple minutes left in free practice. We'll we'll ride on board with Mikey, who's desperately trying to warm those tires up. The track has not really developed, not much rubber getting laid down. Still in those fast conditions. We have not seen any optimum. So if we get a qualifying session with optimum conditions, we really should be able to see sometimes down into the 33s, I would think. A couple more laps to go as we'll ride on board with Mikey. I am right in the middle of the worst of the rain, and it is just going to sit above me for the rest of the night. Mikey comes through Island Bend before getting to the banked hairpin of the Old Shell corner. And that is a corner that really pulls you around. The camber of that hairpin just pulls the car through, gives you a ton of grip that you otherwise would not have. Then through the first chicane of Britton's before you come down to the second chicane of Hislops. Then you get the two left-hand kinks of Clay Hill and the water tower. And a bit too wide. Grip in these cars seems to be a bit of a hot commodity, as not many have been able to find it. We'll go on board with Bahena coming through the first of the two chicanes. And we do have a few newcomers here tonight with us in TRC. I believe Karim is one. Lave newer to the league. Bahena newer as well. Veldkamp newer, as he is actually going to be the first across the line. Has he finished his practice session? Has he invalidated? Two very good questions we may not know the answers to. Craters in the pit lane. Kareem will go off the track at the Old Shell corner. You may remember a while back, the last time that we were at this track in the KTM Cannonball Series, I believe it was, when Winter threaded the needle down through the wall at the Old Shell corner. Across the line, Merkel will bring us into our first qualifying session of the night. Two 25-minute sprints on the table, two 10-minute qualifying sessions. And actually, it may be Harris that will bring us. And no, we will get transitioned right into our qualifying. Who is going first? Fernandez, one of the first ones out, but is not going to be the first one out. That is going to be the 99 of Wagner in the Bentley. And we'll ride on board with Wagner for this outlap. Coming out of the Cascades, down the lakeside straight before you come to the Island Hill Bend. A slight bit of camber that you can use to your advantage to pull some grip. Not as much camber as the Old Shell corner hairpin, though. And there is a lot of camber to be used for that advantageous grip. Then you come into the first of the two chicanes. Britton's turn 7, 8, and 9. And then we come just over the hilltop, just crest the hilltop, before you come down, screaming down the hill for the second chicane of Hislops. That black hay bale tire barrier, whatever it is there, is not going to be there for very long. I don't think it'll survive past the formation lap. But now we come to crest the hill once again for Clay Hill and Water Tower. Two left-hand kinks before we get hard on the brake for the long right-hander of Druids. Crest the hill once again before we head to our final corner, our final true corner. There is a kink that does count as the next corner. We come out of Lodge Corner, and very, very tricky undulation of the track up and down. Then we come through the final kink and across the line to start our first flying lap. So we will let Wagner go for that flying lap with no pressure of the onboard. those Aston Martins absolutely screaming. Who is one of our first Aston Martins back? Young, making a return to TRC. You were in the Bentley all by himself. Maybe one of the first to put in a lap time made just to be out on the outlap. Let's see, 99. It may be the 22 of Fernandez, our first of our Aston Martins. And my connection seems to be a bit wonky. If anybody in the chat just lets me know if you see any drops or if the quality is okay. I think everything is okay, but it's a bit slow on my end, so just have to wait and see, or reload some tabs. 135.9 from Wagner, currently the time to beat. Norman goes second fastest in the Aston. Young goes third fastest. It's 4 Astons and 1 Bentley that have recorded lap times. The number 119 of Labe across the line goes fastest, about a quarter of a second faster than Wagner. Caligari in the Bentley goes 7th. And no Jags yet to bring a time to the board. Harris goes up to P6. And who is that in the Jag just ahead? That is Craters, invalidated on that lap. Labe currently on pole in this first qualifying session. Stream is still up for you guys. Please let me know. It does seem to be very slow and on my end. And again, I do have heavy storms passing through, which could be the issue. Wagner goes back fastest, a 35.610, eclipsing that time from Wagner by just about a 10th. Still a few drivers yet to set a time. Caligari goes up 1 spot in the Bentley and will return to the pit lane, put some fresh tires and maybe a new load of fuel in the car, and go for another lap. Norman up into P3, Fernandez P4, Mikey currently P5. Young down to P6. You were looking for some improvement on this lap. Mansueto, who was very quick in free practice, still yet to bring a lap time. Case Bull goes 12th fastest, at least for the time being. But it is still Wagner on top. And a king that is hard to knock off the hill. Once he gets up on top, he likes to stay up there. Gets out front, stays out front. We have had someone go off just behind. Not sure exactly who that was. Was one of the Astons. Fernandez up to P3, knocks Norman down to P4. Does Norman take it back? Not on this lap. Veldkamp up to P11, diving into the pit lane, or at least was going to go into the pit lane. Labe goes fastest, first time down into the 34s, and pole by 3/4 of a second. Karim Bahena, Merkel, and DeHaro all yet to bring a time. Mikey goes third fastest. But that margin at the top of the field is quite large. 1.5 seconds separates the top three. 3/4 of a second between the top two. Labe is out front by a large margin, and Wagner has a long way both in front of himself and behind in terms of that pace. But it's Aston Martin on top, just a couple minutes left in qualifying. We'll see if there is enough time for any disappointments, any upsets, or any improvements. That V12 Aston Martin absolutely screaming. Through Lodge Corner. Is it more of an improvement from Labe? He is still on it, still going for it, up cresting the hill and across the line. What will it be for Labe? Finds some more time, another 1/4 of a second. Now it is a 1 second gap to Wagner, and Labe, I have a feeling, won't be in that rookie's bronze class for very long. Out of the old shell hairpin. Screaming down the hill for the Bentley of Wagner through Britton's, but I think it may have been a slight overstep at the exit. I don't know if Wagner has enough time to get back around for one more lap. Mikey goes second fastest, says that's good enough for me, dives into the pit lane. Labe through Britton's as well, a few seconds later than Wagner. Cresting over the hill through the two left-hand kinks before going down to Druids. And then they do have the short straight of Warwick Bridge before you come to the tricky final corner of Lodge Corner. I think Wagner will just have enough time to go for one more lap. Really trying to get the nose of that Bentley to come around. It does not seem to want to cooperate. And with barely enough time left, Wagner will get one more lap. The 22 of Fernandez also gets one more lap. The 223 of Young will get one more. The 119 of Labe finds another 1/10 of improvement. 34.450 is the time to beat. Would Wagner be able to do it? Merkel will be the next across the line, just now coming through Druids. Screaming down to the final set of corners. Lodge Corner and then the kink up the hill. Cresting the hill and across the line for Merkel. Is it any improvement? Doesn't need much to improve. Yes, it is, up to P10 for Merkel. And I guess everyone invalidated. That's going to bring an end to the qualifying session. Kareem's still out, but must have been invalidated. Same thing with the 22 of Fernandez. It's Labe on pole. Mikey P2, Wagner P3, Fernandez P4, Mansueto P5, Norman P6, Young P7, Craters P8, Bahena P9, Merkel P10, Harris P11, Ewer P12, Caligari P13, K-Spool P14, Veldkamp P15, Karim P16, and Daharo P17. In the rookie class, it is Labe, Fernandez, Mansueto, Bahena, Ewer, Caligari, Veldkamp, and Karim, and Labe on pole. Should not be hard for him to hold on to that lead in the AM class, but anything can happen. Unfortunate events at the front, but Labe currently in a very, very good position. It's two Aston Martins on the front row. Labe, newer TRC driver, sitting right alongside the veteran Mikey, one of the TRC admins, longtime TRC driver. We will take a short little break and we will be right back for the formation lap. Welcome back as we are just now rolling for the formation lap. Lab A on pole for the first time this season, this series, and just ahead of the Titan, who is Wagner, and right alongside the longtime veteran of Mikey. Two TRC admins to his side and directly behind him. A lot of pressure on Lab A. But as long as he can hold the pace that he has had in qualifying, should be no issue for him whatsoever. Valorio making a last-minute entrance. We'll start P19, and Daharo making a return here with the Wednesday series for TRC. Karim, I believe, a newer driver here with us in the Holy Grail class. Veldkamp new this season as well, and Casebool, I believe, newer to TRC as well. No, actually not new. Been there for a while. I just have not seen him in any stream, so regardless, welcome Casebool to the Wednesday series. You are new in the Holy Grail class as well, but it is Lab A on pole. Overall pole, but that also means pole and starting first in the Holy Grail class as well is eligible for the Holy Grail Championship, which is a separate championship running tandem to the overall championship. It is possible to win both, but you can only do it one time, as if you win the Holy Grail Championship, you are automatically promoted at least 2 silver, possibly 2 gold, depending on the race wins that you have in regards to the class restrictions, the limits and requirements that must be met in order to reach a different license. But all rookie drivers are bronze licensed or no licensed. Should all be bronze licensed, but all rookies. We line up 2 by 2 to get started. It's Aston Martin's in front, and then Wagner in the Bentley all by himself, surrounded by more Aston Martins and a couple Jags. Short run down the hill before we come over the crest and across the line. It's Lab A and Mikey on the front row. Wagner already eyeing the inside if he wants to make an early move. Green, green, green. Valorio gets a drive-through penalty for the race start, a starting infringement. Lab A wants to hold the inside with Mikey. Doesn't really afford him much space on the outside as Lab A desperately wants to get in front as long as he can get his bumper clear, which he has done so before they get to the turn 3 of Cascades. Now down Island Bend. Someone going for a wild ride in an Aston Martin a bit further back. Check and see who that is. That's the number 97 of Merkel. I think managed to keep it off the wall, but definitely going for a ride into the first chicane for the first time here in race number 1. Wagner, I believe, has lost a couple positions, or lost 1 position. He has regained that position, and battle behind. Norman wants to go up the inside of the Jag of Mansueto, and they'll be side by side. Norman running out of road though. Jag Craters. Jag Craters wanted to thread the needle between the two. Not much space to do so. And side by side go Norman and Mansueto. Norman clears. Mansueto got on the brakes. Craters now behind also has the Jag of Harris, who actually goes a touch wide and now has to defend against the Aston Martin of Bahena. The defense there not really going to play much of a factor as Bahena does clear on ahead. And Lab A leading the first lap has stretched his lead out a good ways. He has been very, very quick here at Oulton Park throughout the practice and qualifying sessions. But the battle here for P4 and pretty much going on back from here. The margins are very close. Norman has made it past Mansueto and is starting to pull away a bit. We go back here, this battle between Bahena and Craters, I believe. Bahena and Harris going backwards. Bahena has gotten ahead, has stayed ahead, and that is the Aston Martin of Young bringing up the rear in this fight. 3 ways fighting for P7. It's an Aston Martin being hunted down by a couple Jags. The next pack of 3 up ahead. Norman now has Mansueto wanting to bite back as they head down into the second chicane of Hislops. And no, that tire barrier did not last long, as it's already laying in the grass in the middle of the chicane there. Case Bull has had an off, rejoins the circuit with a bit of damage. Was very, very close to the Aston Martin of Merkel. Don't see any damage on Merkel there. Unsure of exactly what caused that incident, but Case Bull off the track and into the wall. Craters in a bit of no man's land himself, trying to catch up to the rear of Mansueto as Norman and Mansueto continue their fight between each other. Norman again, at least through sectors 1 and 2, has started to run away a bit. It's just as they come into sector 3 that Mansueto really starts to close that gap up. But this 3-way fight here for P7 continues. Bahena, Harris, and Young as they come through the hairpin of the old shell corner. Just 5 minutes into this race. Into that first chicane. Everybody really having to choke up, get on the brakes, and slow down. These older cars don't really want to drive the front end very deep. They don't really have much dive, much response, which I believe is lending to a bit more of a rearward driving style, which is why we're seeing a lot of sliding. Bahena goes off at the exit of the chicane. Will that allow Harris to close up and maybe have an attack by the time they get to Druids? Not quite, but is a lot closer and is well within slipstream range. May have another chance as they come into Lodge Corner. And Bahena now giving a flash of the lights on Craters. Harris goes a bit deeper on the brakes. Had to get on the brakes much harder as to not go into the rear of Bahena. And Bahena, the big mover. Krim in the 111. Aston Martin with a bit of damage on the front has fallen wayward of the pack a bit. Battle here between Case, Bull, and Valorio. Just back a bit further. Now Harris under attack from the Aston Martin of Young. The longer this goes on, the closer and closer they are catching to those drivers just ahead. You can see Craters. He is right now just on the cusp of slipstream range from Bahena. If Bahena can get close enough to grab a bit of that slipstream, it may be possible for him to catch up and go by, or at least just stick a lot closer to him. It is the battle of those two back behind Harris and Young. As we do have a car off. That is the 913 of Craters. I think he may have just done that on his own, trying to drive the car a bit too hard. And Ewer in the Bentley wants to go past. Craters defending that position, though, not really letting it happen. And they continue on in the order they were. Bahena, Harris, and Young. Bahena once again a lot earlier on the brakes into that final corner than Harris, and Harris constantly has to check up. It could be a development for an overtaking opportunity here in a couple laps. Crater still defending from Ewer in the Bentley. Craters is definitely under attack. Veldkamp gets overtaken by Merkel, who drove around the outside heading into Cascades. A very brave move from the 97 of Merkel and goes up into P11. To just up ahead, Craters and Ewer continue their fight. Bahena, Harris, and Young continue their run together. And Mikey is now starting to come under fire from Wagner. The 111 of Kareem is off, and we'll wait to rejoin when the coast is clear. But Labe has just pulled away at the front. No one to challenge his dominance, as he has already got a 8-second gap, over an 8-second gap. Battle here for P2. Clash of Titans between Mikey and Wagner. A lot of race wins between these two. Across the line, Wagner trying to feign the move on Mikey. Mikey is not going to fall for it. He's seen it too many times. And the 43 of DeHaro off and into the wall at Druids does get the car restarted. This battle here starting to materialize into something. Harris getting a bit impatient behind Bahena. He's also got Young, who is pushing the envelope as well. Is the pressure going to... Oh, I think it almost had too much of the inside curb through Cascades, and Bahena loses one position to Harris. Now Young, flashing the lights, wants to go through as well. And the pressure has caused Bahena to break a bit. Maybe dirty tires, maybe warm tires. That slide is definitely not going to be good for keeping those tires in their manageable temperature range. And now maybe overdriving the car as a reactionary strategy. Bahena going a bit deep into the Britain's chicane. Is Young going to send the dive down into Hislop's? No, he is not, but Harris is starting to pull away just ahead. And a bad run out of that second chicane. Not going to have much momentum. Will he be able to hold on to the position from Young? I believe he will. Craters is also coming back into this fight, as he has lost the opposition from Ewer. Mikey and Wagner continue their run together. It's Wagner trying to find a way around the Aston Martin. Wagner did not out-qualify Mikey, but both showed similar pace. And well, I can tell you there's a bit of a size difference between those two cars. The Bentley is a lot bigger than the Aston Martin, and I don't think Mikey has much in his rearview mirror aside from a very, very large Bentley Continental GT3 sitting behind in all three mirrors. Great big Bentley logo in the rearview mirror. Thank you, Ken, for the follow. Just hit 520. Thank you very much. Bahena and Young now in their fight, but Craters has cruised right up back into this fight. Remember, he was ahead of this trio, or this now duo, as Harris is starting to ride off into the sunset. Ewer and Veldkamp in the Bentley and Aston Martin. Ewer gets a very poor run out of the chicane, and they'll be side by side heading into the braking zone for the second chicane. Veldkamp able to get it. Ewer just gave it away. And with this battle up ahead from Bahena, Young, if Craters can get closer to it, we may also be bringing both Ewer and Veldkamp into it. We may have 4 or 5 cars fighting for position very shortly. Veldkamp trying to gather some space, has gone past the Bentley. See if Ewer has enough momentum to fight the position back. Goes a touch wide, and that is definitely going to allow Veldkamp to pull a bit of a gap. I think he has just gotten outside of slipstream range. Yes, he has, and is now trying to hold on to the rear of Jack Craters just up ahead. Battle between these two continues. They are just behind, I believe that is the 79 Bentley of Caligari. As Caligari goes around, Mikey goes into the front of him. Wagner is just able to escape, threads the needle between the two, and that is not any sort of malicious incident whatsoever. That's just Caligari going around and Mikey getting collected. Very, very unfortunate for Mikey. And he has now gone down a few positions. They may have actually lapped traffic a bit, so I don't know if Mikey has directly lost any positions. I don't think so, but he's got the P4 drivers of Norman and Mansueto immediately behind. It is Karim in the Aston Martin off again, and Caligari is gone into the pit lane. Well, that contact should guarantee Labe the win and Wagner second place, but now Mikey, he does have the pace, but he's got the threat of Norman behind and a bit of a damaged car. Not sure of the extent of that damage. It doesn't seem to be too much. It was a lighter tap of the hits between cars that I have seen. And as long as Mikey can cool the tires off, regain his composure, he should be able to pull away, but Norman is within that slipstream range and may be able to hold on. Craters goes into the pit lane as well. We've got cars dropping out of this race left and right. Norman under attack from Mansueto, and the 22 of Fernandez off the track as well and into the pit lane. Retirements left and right, as Oulton Park is not seeming to be very nice to these drivers tonight. Ewer and Merkel continue their battle through the chicane of Britons. Almost contact between the two. Norman goes very, very wide, often into the grass, and the grass just kind of pulls you off here at Oulton Park. But that outside curb at the second chicane is definitely starting to see a lot of hindrance of drivers. And Oulton is not a good track in the chat, and there are many drivers with you that would, or many drivers on track tonight that would agree with you. But is Oulton worse than Snetterton? That is a question that I have, because I would say that Oulton is probably a better track than Snetterton. Ewer has pulled away from Merkel behind just a bit. So Oulton is not better than Snetterton. Doesn't mean that Oulton's good, but Snetterton is really not good. At least in my personal opinion. Labe is cruising away with this one. The gap is quite large to the 99 of Wagner. I believe it's over 10 seconds. Oh, it's actually almost 20 seconds. And Labe, one of the few drivers who seems to be completely comfortable here at Oulton Park, is cruising away with what should be a maiden victory for Labe. Mansueto and Norman continuing their fight. And Mikey, I say, is pulling away, but running wide at the exit of Lodge Corner. Running wide here could spell your demise, as it has many drivers tonight. Ewer and Merkel, as Ewer has actually gone around Merkel now. Is Merkel going to have an opportunity to fight that back? They'll go side by side across the line. 46 thousandths of a second separating them. The Aston Martin has the inside. Will the Bentley be able to pull off the old switcheroo, or does he keep a nose? As they head into Cascades, the Aston Martin does get a better run Does seem to have better acceleration, but not much better speed, and overcooking it from Merkel off the track, and it cuts across the nose. I can guarantee you that was a clincher from Veldkamp there, as his race almost went up in smoke, but very luckily did not. And Merkel going off for a ride again. Dirty tires, definitely not going to be the way that you will have wanted it to go tonight, but there is another race. DeHaro in the Jaguar going past Merkel, who had to abandon the track. Norman went a bit too deep into Lodge Corner. And Craters is back out. He is laps down, but did repair some damage. Wants to at least score a few points tonight, at least here in race number 1. Not directly racing against Norman, because Norman is in P5, Craters is in P16 and a couple laps down, but still some good racing between the two regardless. But Oulton Park, consistency and cleanliness will be the topic of discussion tonight. And not so much cleanliness in the racing, just cleanliness in the track, cleanliness in knowing your line, cleanliness in consistency. As there has definitely seemed to be a lot of overdriving corners. But doesn't seem to be much front end cooperation. Not really getting much drive out, and it could just be part of driving these older cars, which is what this series is about. It's about driving the older Grand Touring cars, maybe the bigger cars that people don't drive too much, like the Jag and the Bentley. Or in the case of the Aston Martin, it's just an older version of a car that we still have. It still races today, but with a nice sounding V12 that can be heard from anywhere on the track. It's like a Porsche for this series. If there's an Aston Martin on track, I can guarantee you can hear it. Bahena and Valorio now for P10. Battle between these two. Bahena just keeping it off the wall will give the position to Valorio. Bahena has DeHaro behind, but DeHaro is a good ways behind. And about 5 minutes left in this race. Labe, no one to worry about in front, no one close enough to worry about behind. And Labe just cruising away with this one. Ewer and Veldkamp are not done though. This battle for P8, these two have been battling the entire duration of this first race. And for those of you who may be newer to this series, Labe, Wagner, and Mikey for Q2, the second qualifying session of the night, for the second sprint of the night, they will only be able to get one flying lap in Q2. So as soon as they leave the pit lane and cross the finish line twice, their qualifying is done. A bit of an overcook from Veldkamp, too deep into the chicane, had to cut straight through it. And that's going to open that gap up once again. But things have calmed down here in race number 1. Just a couple laps to go. Labe with a large lead. Undoubtedly has had the fastest car on track tonight. Seems to be the most comfortable with the Oulton Park layout, as he has pulled a 20-second gap away from Wagner. It was 8 seconds. There was the incident with Caligari and Mikey. Wagner had to lose a little bit of time there, but ever since then it just has been from raw pace. So let's actually have a look at the lap times from Lab A. Two more laps to go as Lab A crosses the line. We should have this lap and one more. And having to get off the throttle, Lab A still pushing. Almost overdrove the car onto the outside curb, and the curbs here, both inside and outside, have been deemed to be deadly. DeHaro and Merkel in a fight here as DeHaro, I believe, has gone past Merkel, but Merkel wants to fight this position back. DeHaro clears Merkel, gets onto the sausage curb, pops both of the front wheels off of that Aston Martin up into the air. Fernandez goes into the pit lane. And we will continue watching this battle for P11 between DeHaro and Merkel. That is the 111 of Karim off at Lodge Corner. And the 913 of Craters off at turn 1 again. And these 90-degree right-hand turns. There is a lot of elevation change, a lot of undulation up and down. Craters just sits and waits. Karim does have blue flags and will hold off around to the outside. And then we'll yield for Merkel to go through. Lab A has started the final lap of the race, and no contest for him. Wagner is just on the final short straight, the Warwick Bridge straight, as Lab A comes out of Cascades and onto Lakeside Straight. DeHaro with Merkel in tow. I think DeHaro may have it locked down. DeHaro with a touch of damage on the nose of that Jaguar, and Merkel sends it around. Unsure of exactly how he did that. That's, I think, a bit impressive. Karim goes around just ahead of the 913 of Craters. And Lab A, our race leader, comes through. Karim seemingly having a few issues with traction, getting the car turned the right way. But Lab A comes through. Through Druids and onto the Warwick Bridge straight, under the gantry, and into Lodge Corner. Floating it out to the outside, down the hill, up over the crest and across the line. Lab A takes victory in race number 1. I believe Lab A's maiden victory here with TRC. Wagner comes across the line, P2 eventually, as Lab A has pulled many football fields or soccer pitches. It would be a bit more of an inappropriate denomination of measurement there. Wagner P2. Mikey will bring home P3. Krim has finished P17. Fernandez will finish P18. Mikey P3. Mansueto P4. Norman P5. Casebool P14. Young will come across the line to P6. Harris, P7, Ewer will come across in P8. It was a battle across the line between Veldkamp and Valorio, just a quarter of a second or less than a quarter of a second between the two. DeHaro, P11. Merkel will bring home P12. And Bahena will bring home P13. Casebowl P14, Craters P15, Caligari P16, Karim P17, Fernandez P18. And Bahena will move us into Q2. A bit of damage picked up there at the end from Karim, but Labe takes home the win in race number 1. We'll see how it translates to race number 2. We have a second qualifying session. Everybody except for Labe, Wagner, and Mikey get a full qualifying session. Labe, Wagner, and Mikey, the podium from race number 1, get 1 flying lap. That is all they get. They do not get to take multiple flying laps. They only get 1 opportunity at it. If they blow that flying lap, that is it. They have to go into the pit lane and start wherever they start, which is likely going to be from the pack, if not all the way in the back. So we will wait for the session to kick back over. And we'll get started with Q2. The rain has subsided for now, but I'm not sure of exactly how that translates over to my connection. I think where everything is okay. And over a second was the fastest lap between Labe and Wagner in race number 1. And we just wait for the transition over to race number 2, qualifying number 2. And there we go, optimum track conditions this time. Wagner, Harris, and Ewer have the first spots. Do they go out first? Who is our first out of the pit lane? It is Fernandez in the Aston Martin who will be the first to get out there and use that free track position at the front. Will Fernandez use this open track to his advantage? The rest of the field comes out behind. The 119 of Labe wants to go for his lap early. Labe just with 1 shot. Mikey stays in the pit lane. Wagner stays in the pit lane. And Labe is behind Fernandez, but has a good bit of a gap. They're essentially out on their own between the two of them. Not much traffic interruption. Labe, that's a bit of an odd tire warming strategy as he is going rally racing in the English countryside. Gets it handled. Those tires are not quite going to be exactly in the operating window I think he was looking for. And he also has the 12. Who is that in the 12? Behind that is the 12 of Norman Elizondo in the Aston Martin. A late join, but will be able to qualify. And between Labe and Elizondo, there is going to be some competition. Labe dominant tonight, but if anybody is going to challenge dominance, Elizondo is the one to do so. Labe, Q1 pole sitter, race 1 winner, absolute dominant show. We'll see if Labe can repeat. Fernandez just up ahead. Also on the flying lap. This will be Labe's 1-shot qualifier. If it's not good on this one, it'll just be as good as it gets. Just needs to focus on this lap staying valid. Down the lakeside straight and through the island bend, heading into the hairpin of the old shell corner. Big banked hairpin, really pulls the car around. Does seem to be some grip on that Aston Martin. Those tires are at least warmer than they were. You're not going to get too much time to warm up these tires on a 1-shot qualifier. And through the chicane, through the Britain chicane, absolutely flying, carrying a ton of speed. And that sausage curb on the inside did not seem to affect the suspension whatsoever. Now through the second chicane of Hislops. This one needs to be a bit cleaner and nice and easy on the power, using those track limits to their maximum extent without overextending across that exit curb. That exit curb really disrupts the car, Gets the suspension bouncing all over the place. Very easy to lose control. No, Labe pushing too hard, loses it at Druids, and that is going to end Labe's qualifying. The 22 of Fernandez, cross line of 136.607. Harris on P1 now, 36.542, just 65 thousandths of a second faster than Fernandez. Norman was P3, gets knocked down to P4 from Caligari in the Bentley. And Caligari will dive back into the pit lane. Young goes up to P3, DeHaro P4. Labe still in the pit lane, Wagner still in the pit lane, Mikey still in the pit lane. I think Wagner just about to drop off the jacks, waiting for an open opportunity in the track, and goes out now. We'll have a couple cars going on by, but I think overall will not really be affecting the lap. Caligari into the pit lane. Harris on pole for now. Fernandez on pole, 36.042, 5/10ths of a second between Harris and Fernandez. Harris finds a bit more time, about half of that time, but not enough to take that pole position back. It's Fernandez in the Aston Martin on provisional pole. Mansueto up to P4. Maybe shaking some of the jitters out in race number 1, and with a bit less competition out there on track, namely Labe, Wagner, and Mikey. The lap's coming a bit easier. Still no one down into the 34s yet, like Labe was in Q1. But again, Labe has invalidated on his solo flying lap. He only gets one opportunity since he was on the podium in race 1. That means that Labe, while he does have the pace to do so, he needs to be very meticulous in trying to slice and dice through the field in order to regain those positions. The win is not out of the book for Labe in race number 2. It's just going to be a lot harder. Bahena up to P5. You were in P7. Norman in P9. Wagner just getting started with his flying lap, and Mikey just up ahead. We'll ride with Mikey for the time being, and let's get on board on this Aston Martin. Blue flags up ahead. That is Bahena in the Aston Martin. Mikey, I think, had to have a bit of a lift, didn't know exactly which way he was going to go. And being very cautious on this lap, just trying to keep it valid. He knows that he will out-qualify Labe, the previous race winner, if he can just take this lap valid. Any valid lap is better than an invalid lap. Labe sitting in the pit lane, absolutely kicking himself. At least I would be. Bet the lap was good, but just overstepped a bit too much into Druids, and that's all it took. That one little invalidation. Mikey clears through Druids. See how this lap is. The 15 of Elizondo off and around just before the final corner. Out of Lodge, over the crest, and across the line from Mikey. What's it good for? Not good. May have just been the outlap from Mikey. What about Wagner? It's good enough for pole of 35.042. Wagner making use of the one shot. Does Fernandez have any more time left in it? will get just barely 2 more laps should he choose to take them. No improvement on this lap, has 2 more opportunities. They have to absolutely be used to their maximum potential. Mikey on his flying lap now has to try and take that lap time away from Wagner, and was able to outqualify Wagner in race number 1. Mansueto knocks Fernandez down to P3 as Fernandez jumps up into that 2nd spot on the front row. Mikey has enough time for 1 more lap after this one, but again, doesn't matter because he has already used his 1 flying lap that he is allotted, being on a podium from race number 1. Getting very, very comfortable with the outside track limits. Almost lost it on that curb, but just pushing, a slight correction, and he continues on with the speed. Across the line from Mikey. Is it good enough for pole? No. Good enough for P4. Close, but no cigar. And not on the front row, at least for the time being. At least, or not on the front row for sure. On the 2nd row for the time being. We'll see if he's able to hold on to it. Valorio across the line. Sorry, not across the line. It just looks like he's coming out of the final corner. He is just heading into Druids. Had the 97 of Merkel, I believe it was. And will invalidate that lap. Valorio not too happy with that one. Stays P6. Only needed a touch of an improvement to go up a position. Kareem across the line will pull into the pit lane. Maybe, maybe not. Goes P16. About a 1.5 seconds faster than Norman. Elizondo on a valid lap here, but struggling to get the car under control. Labe, as of right now, is starting at the back of the field. And Elizondo sliding the car left and right. It's currently Wagner on pole. Elizondo, I don't know if this lap is valid or not. He is still out. I think the session has ended, but we'll see if this gets counted at all. And no, it will not. So Elizondo at the back. Caligari will now be demoted to the back after that disconnection. And Labe is not going to start on the very back row. It's Wagner on pole, Fernandez P2, Mansueto P3, Mikey P4, Harris P5, Valorio P6, Young P7, Norman P8, Ewer P9, Bahena P10, Daharo P11, Merkel P12, K-Spool P13, Craters P14, Veldkamp P15, Karim P16, Labe P17, Elizondo P18, and Caligari P19. 19 drivers on the grid ready to get rolling for race number 2. As Wagner leads the field. We'll take another quick break and we'll be back for the formation lap for race number 2. And welcome back. We are rolling for the formation lap for race number 2. Wagner back on pole, a place where he likes to be, a place where he's very comfortable. Fernandez in the Aston Martin, good enough for P2, and Mansueto in the Jag in P3. 2 Holy Grail drivers in 2 front rows. Could deem very interesting, but a lot of experience further behind. Mikey Harris, 2 of our pro drivers, very, very experienced. Taharo as well, Craters as well. Labe and Elizondo, P17 and P18, are going to be 2 drivers that you're really going to want to watch out for. Labe, dominant in race number 1, was able to get out front and stay out front. And easily, from what we have seen, has the fastest pace on track, but he needs to be able to make his way through. Very, very nice and clean. Immediately behind is the top tier threat of Elizondo. Likely the most feared driver in TRC. Elizondo is another driver that likes to get out front and stay out front. They're in very similar colored cars with the outline liveries. But Elizondo and Labe, we'll see if they hold each other up enough to hinder both and to pull them out of a potential for the lead. And they both need to be really lucky as well. They both have the speed to get up through the field and to the front, but they need everything to go their way. No unfortunate incidents up ahead. Any sort of damage, any sort of penalty will take them right out of the competition for the win. They may be at the back of the field, but don't rule them out. Keep an eye on Labe and Elizondo, as we will be watching those 2 to see how they slice and dice their way through the field, or whether or not they just fight each other the whole time and maybe slow each other down too much to be able to reach the front. Wagner, then Fernandez, then Mansueto. As Wagner will pull to the inside. They get the 2x2 call. They bunch up as they come through the Warwick Bridge straight. Wagner will have the inside. And in the big Bentley, it's going to be hard to find a way around it. Very, very large and wide. That Bentley, you can see the size difference between the Bentley and the Aston Martin. The Jag, a bit bigger car, but the Bentley is just very dense. The Jag is a bit longer than the Bentley, I think. And up through the final corner, just over the hill. Wagner wants to be very, very far to the inside. He's over in the marbles, but he doesn't care. Green, green, green. We are racing here in race number 2. Round 2 of the TRC Posh British GT3 series. Wagner secures it through the first corner. We'll have a look behind at Elizondo and Caligari. Karim gets involved. I think Elizondo involved, goes into the wall. Shouldn't have too much damage there. And allows Karim back ahead. Labe goes on through. Who is that in a Bentley that is off? I think that may have been the Bentley of Ewer. Yes, it is the Bentley of Ewer who has some damage. Elizondo at the very back of the field. Ewer trying to fight those positions back that he has lost. Case Bull under attack from Labe now, as Labe's up to P14, looking to go for P13 at the front of the field. Wagner has pulled away slightly. Fernandez in P2 still, but Mansueto has been attacked by Mikey and has lost that position for P3. Karim and Elizondo both around at the Britain's chicane. Elizondo will pull through. We go on by Ewers, trying to take the position away from Caligari. Who is that off? Is that Labe? No, it is not. It's the Aston Martin of, not Karim. Who was that in that other Aston Martin that had just gone off? It was the 616 of Veldkamp, it was. Veldkamp and Ewer in race number 1 were having a long-standing battle that went pretty much the entire duration of the race. Ewer in a very tight spot here, wanted to try and find an opening to go up the inside, but it just never materialized, and Labe is almost all the way up into the top 10. Does have Craters. Actually, Labe is into the top 10. Labe now fighting Craters for P9. Case Bull goes for a wild ride, goes around, gets tagged by the Aston Martin of Mahena. A pirouette at the exit of turn 1. Not sure exactly how healthy that Jag still is, but I think he's good enough to continue driving it, as he will continue driving it. Fernandez under attack from Mikey. Mikey had some pace early on. Was very, very good in Q1, but just was unable with his one flying lap to put the time together for Q2. And is trying to apply the pressure to the second place Aston Martin of Fernandez. Lorio with Harris applying pressure behind. If we go back a little bit more, Labe has gone past Craters. Labe, absolutely comfortable, smooth operator here at Oulton Park. Slicing and dicing through the field, no problem for Labe. He is now trying to close the gap to DeHaro and Merkel in a scrap of their own. And then it's a long way to the lead pack, which starts at Harris and goes forward from there. Wagner leads the first 2 laps of the race. Fernandez still holding on to P2. Mikey trying to catch up the best he can, but Mansueto, Valorio, and Harris all still riding idly behind. Fernandez goes a bit slow through Cascades Corner, down the lakeside straight, and through Island Bend. Fernandez a touch wide, almost went 2 tires into the grass and goes too deep into the old shell hairpin. Is Mikey going to have an opportunity at the Britain chicane? He's all over the bumper of Fernandez. This is the fight for P2. As Wagner will just let them fight behind. He will use that to his advantage to pull away. Labe up to P7, has just gone past the Jaguar of DeHaro. And now how far away is he to Harris? You see Labe just cresting the hill behind this group. And this group is also in a large battle from Fernandez all the way back to Harris. The gaps just small between each other. They're all within slipstream range of each other, which will help them pull away. I think Harris may have been dropped off of this pack. Yes, Harris is out of slipstream range, and Labe is going to be closing 5 minutes into this race, 20 minutes left to go. And we'll see if Labe has the pace in it to catch up to the rest of the field. Fernandez with Mikey immediately behind. Mikey able to drive that Aston Martin a little bit harder than Fernandez, especially through Cascades here. No, too deep from Fernandez. Mikey sends it up the inside and pulls right on by. Fernandez now down to P3. Is Mansueto going to try and latch onto that momentum and also find a way past Fernandez, or is Fernandez going to find some forward momentum and get his revenge back on Mikey? Very deep into the old shell corner. Will that give him a better drive out? Kind of diamonding the corner like you would on a high bank short oval. Through the chicane, very, very crucial momentum spot. If you can get on the traction early, you can really get a good run on the car ahead, and Fernandez has done exactly that. He's not going to be close enough exactly for a move into the next chicane, but he's close enough to apply the pressure. Mikey actually goes a touch wide, not off the track by any means, but a little bit deeper into the chicane than he probably would have liked. And Harris has now fallen a good ways back from that pack in P6, and Labe is closing, has closed a couple seconds on that gap. Fernandez gets it all wrong, goes off at Druids, and now Harris is going to find a way past Fernandez from P2, now down to P6. Mansueto up to P4, actually P3 now as they come across the timing line. Valorio in P4, Harris P5, Fernandez P6, Labe looking to find a way past, as you just see him come into the background exiting turn 1. Elizondo is up to P15. Now trying to catch to the number 97 of Merkel. Has just gone past the 616 of Veldkamp, so Elizondo up to P14 actually. He's got a long way to go, or it was a long way to go to get to Merkel. He's got a long way to go if he gets past Merkel to the next car ahead, which is the 223 of Young. Tight runnings between these three, between these two at least. Labbe wants to take advantage of it the best he can. Harris versus Fernandez into the second chicane. Fernandez had to get very, very hard on the brakes. Labbe is right there behind. We'll see how Labbe goes about pulling this move off. Will actually go on board with Labbe in the Aston Martin. Coming up the two left-hand kinks before the hard braking right-hander of Druids. He gives them the space up ahead, but he's able to get onto the power a little bit earlier than those two. Trying to maybe send one of those two drivers up ahead a little bit too deep into the corner. He got a good drive out of the Lodge corner, the final corner there for a second, but ultimately had to avoid it. Is it going to be a lunge into turn 1 from Labbe? Yes, it is. I think he's got it clear. He's at least alongside. He is clear. And up into P6 for Labbe, now trying to catch up to the Jag of Harris up ahead. Labbe, again, as I said in the pre-race, during the formation lap, you cannot count Labbe out. He has really shown that he is the dominant pace here at Oulton Park. We'll see if it translates to the rest of the season. Goes very, very deep into the old shell corner. Barely got on the brakes enough. Just barely a touch onto the rear of Harris, and quick thinking, quick reaction from Harris to keep that nose pointed the right way. Labbe carrying a lot of speed, wants to get on by. Maybe it's going to be a late braking move into the second chicane. No, has the nose there. Tries to feign the move, tries to apply the pressure, but Harris did not fall for it. And now a bit more work to be done from Labbe to get this move done. Wants to try and send it around the outside to position the nose at the inside at Druids. Is not going to work. Harris defending like a Jaguar. I was going to say defending like a Lion, but with a big old Jaguar on the side of that car, it's a bit more appropriate. Can Labbe force the overshoot from Harris too deep and maybe try and get a cut back around? There's the mistake that Labbe needed. Harris with a bit of a wiggle at corner exit. He loses a ton of momentum. Is Labbe going to be able to close off the move completely? Yes, he is. Up the inside, two tires on the inside curve and through. Labbe up to P5 has cleared Harris. Fight for P4 up ahead between Mansueto and Valorio. I was actually going to check on the fight between DeHaro and Ewer, but I don't think it's that close anymore. Harris and Fernandez. Now as Fernandez wants to follow through on the momentum from Labbe. Mansueto has opened up the gap to Valorio just a bit, but Labbe with the fastest lap up to P5. Almost halfway through this race, but he has got a lot of the work done that he needed to get done. And now there's only 3 cars between himself and the leader, but that is a lot of time that needs to be gained. Let me actually pull up the live timing and see what kind of lap times Labbe is running. Because if Labbe's got a second faster than the rest of the field, he may have enough time to close the gap up and take this win away, or at least challenge the win away from Wagner. Mansueto and Valorio continuing their battle. This is for the final spot on the podium, at least for the time being, before Labbe eventually, I would say inevitably, pulls up to the rear of these two. As you see him just in the background, Labbe, an unstoppable force tonight at Oulton Park. Harris and Fernandez off the heels of Labbe. Labbe has gone through. Harris and Fernandez fighting for P6. Ewer and Young in a battle as well. Elizondo up to P14, actually should be up to P13 now, as yes, he has found a way past Merkel, but now has a long way to go to catch the next car up ahead, which would be the 913 of Craters. Battle between Mansueto and Valorio continues, but the Aston Martin of Labe in the background is not so much a small little black and green speck, as you can see the full silhouette of that Aston Martin. He is closing and rapidly. We'll actually go on board with Labe again, and we'll see kind of what it looks like. We are officially halfway through this race, but with clean air up ahead, Wagner has taken the fastest lap of the race back, so maybe the race win not so much going to be inside the realm of possibility for Labe. It doesn't mean that he can't try, though. Wagner, the fastest lap, just 0.2 faster than Labe. Aside from those two, Labe about 0.6 of a second faster than the fastest lap from Mikey. A bit of switching and crossing, a little bit of switcheroo crisscross from Mansueto and Valorio just up ahead. Go very, very wide, Mansueto. 2 tires on the inside, or 2 tires on the outside curb. His furthest 2 inside tires were there. Really using the extent of the track limit. Side by side through Island Bend. Is that going to allow Labe to go around the outside? They make contact, but Labe gets corrected. Not so much a self-correct, but a bit of help from Mansueto. Labe had the speed and was going to go around the outside. Very odd overtaking opportunity, but Labe has the speed, and Labe is just on rails tonight. Labe up to P4. Will now try and take P3 away from Valorio here. Mansueto with that slight bit of contact, but luckily it did not take the position away or really pull Labe all the way around, as Labe has just been on an absolute hard charge tonight. Labe has taken that fastest lap of the race back away from Wagner. Wait for the live timing to re-up before we look at that. Now Labe wanting to fight for P3. Valorio stands between himself and P3. 10 minutes left in the race, and he's got the 16 of Mikey up ahead, and then just coming through the foreground, the number 99 of Wagner. It has been quiet for these two at the front, but Labe may make that a little bit louder. Ewer and Young in a fight. Ewer ahead of Young. And thank you, Bricks, for the follow. Young goes too deep into Cascades off. He didn't manage to go, or managed to keep it out of the grass. Did not go into the grass. Craters in the Jag all over the rear, flashing the lights, saying, hey, you've made a mistake. I've got a little bit of speed. I want to get past you. We'll see if it's a late move into the old shell hairpin. It is not going to be. Labe now onto the rear of Valorio. This is actually, it's the race for P3, but it is the race for the Holy Grail race win here, or the race lead, I should say. Not quite the win yet. Labe with blistering speed. We'll see if he is able to get past Valorio. Valorio will do everything he can to defend this podium position from Labe. We'll see if it is enough from Valorio, as Labe again just has unreal pace. Labe's fastest lap now 0.5 of a second faster than the fastest lap from Wagner. Again, I don't think he has enough laps on raw pace to catch up to Wagner, as it is taking him a little bit to catch the 41 of Valorio, but it is not impossible. Mikey just coming through the foreground. He may be able to catch Mikey if he can get out front and into clean air. He just set that fastest lap in dirty air. Labe getting much more of a deeper drive into the hairpin. 34.202, the fastest lap from Labe. Valorio actually holds the second fastest lap in the Aston Martin, and I believe he is probably because of the pressure and push being applied by Labe. Just trying to keep that Aston Martin up ahead, and it actually has pushed him to drive faster. Still half a second between the time set by Labe and the time set by Valorio and Wagner. Valorio and Wagner with lap times pretty much the same. And then Mikey, Labe's lap is 1.2 seconds faster than Mikey. If Labe can get past Valorio, Labe may be able to catch up to Mikey. I think the pair of them themselves are catching up to Mikey in the Aston Martin. And it may be a three-way fight for P2. Just have to see if Valorio can keep it under his feet, keep it controlled while Labe is pushing, because these two are absolutely flying together now. It's not just Labe, it's the both of them. I think a bit of a mistake from Valorio into turn one. That has pulled Labe right back into it. Labe, you can see, just getting a touch of oversteer, pushing that Aston Martin to its absolute limit. Harris and Fernandez in this fight once again. Not sure of exactly how close Fernandez is getting. Ewer and Young back in their fight as well. Young trying to catch back up to Ewer. But this fight between Valorio and Labe, very, very close between these two. And they are both running very, very quick raw pace. Even in the midst of their battle, they are catching up to the Aston Martin just up ahead of Mikey. One mistake from either would pretty much guarantee one the position from the other. 54 of Case Bull off at Lodge Corner, and the mistake comes from Labe. Too deep on the brakes. I think Valorio may have gotten on the brakes a bit earlier than Labe suspected, but Labe had to avoid. And now that's going to make it a lot harder for Labe to catch up. Labe still possible to get onto the podium, still possible to take this Holy Grail win away from Valorio, but taking a position away from Mikey, it's not impossible. They've both caught up a lot to the number 16 Aston Martin of Mikey, but I think going for the lead from Wagner is off the table at this point. As long as Wagner keeps it safe and doesn't get involved in any incident, Wagner should be able to bring it home nice and easy. Ewer and Young continuing their fight. The 12 of Norman off just up ahead. I think a self-inflicted incident. And trying to get it righted. Spins it around as he dumped the clutch. Ewer and Young with the old shell hairpin. Ewer stays ahead. Young unable to get by, unable to get close enough for a move. These two have been racing very close to together for quite some time. Mikey is fully under threat from Valorio, and Labe right there as well. I think that incident with Labe on the previous lap may have killed some of Labe's momentum. I think we do have a very real possibility of a three-way fight for P2. The gap to Wagner, at least from Mikey, is starting to open. But I think Valorio and Labe are holding station on their pace. I think Mikey may be dropping off the pace just slightly. Mikey making a few mistakes. Valorio's right on the bumper now, and as this battle ensues, it's going to bring Labe right into it, side by side between Valorio and Mikey through the island bend. Is Labe going to find an opportunity up the inside? Will he try to go around the outside of both of them? He wants to go around the outside of Valorio, side by side, unable to get close enough, unable to get a bumper on him. And they will just continue to run 1, 2, and 3 the way they are, 2, 3, and 4 in position.
Mikey, Valorio, and Labe, they have the Aston Martin of Bahena up ahead. Bahena is, I believe, a lap down, and Bahena avoids the track, does not want to get in the way. It's going to be 2 laps to go when Wagner comes to the line. It's 3 Aston Martins, 1, 2, and 3, or it's again 2, 3, and 4 in their positions. But these 3 Aston Martins all fighting for P2. Mikey, then Valorio, then Labe. Labe again started from the back, or not quite from the back. I believe he started P17, but right there pretty much on the back row. With 2 laps to go, the win is off the books for all 3 of these drivers, but they are going to desperately fight for P2. Mikey, Valorio, and Labe. All 3 within slipstream range of each other down the Lakeside straight through Island Bend and then into the Old Shell Corner. We've seen Labe have a ton of speed, getting a lot of drive into and out of the hairpin, really using the camber to its maximum potential. And a bit of a flash of the lights from Labe wants to get into the head of Valorio. Mikey makes a bit of a mistake. Valorio makes a touch of a mistake. Mikey, now going to be a sitting duck, has no momentum, no traction. They're going to be 3 wide, at least giving the silhouette of 3 wide. None of them able to really get close enough to apply the pressure to the driver up ahead, but nose to tail 3 ways for P2. And these 2, Valorio and Labe, also fighting for that Holy Grail win tonight for race 2 as well. Wagner will bring us to the final lap of the race. It's Mikey ahead of Valorio, ahead of Labe. Labe wants to try and send it into the final corner. He does get a bit of a mistake that he was trying to push out of Valorio. Will it give him the opportunity? No. Heavy defense from Valorio into turn 1. Will Labe try to run the outside? No. A late dive to the inside. Valorio does not react, stands ground in the middle of the track. They hold their position as they are. Now this battle is starting to pull these 2 away from Mikey. But Labe wants this win for the Holy Grail, wants to at least get onto the podium. He wants to double podium tonight. Mikey up ahead is not going to make it easy to take it. Valorio holds his ground. Will Labe send another move into the old hairpin? They make a bit of contact. Labe pushing Valorio through. Just nowhere to go, had more momentum, but again, nowhere to take it. Into the Britain chicane. Wagner up ahead. He will win this race. He will take the checkered flag, but it is still anyone's game for P2, still anyone's game for the Holy Grail win for race 2. Labe wants to send it up the inside at the chicane. It's just not close enough for it to work. He's only got a couple more opportunities if he wants to take it. Up the hill through the 2 left-hand kinks. It's getting a bit dire for Labe if he wants to get onto the podium, if he wants this Holy Grail win. Valorio will defend it with everything he's got. The 79 of Caligari pirouettes off the screen at the bottom. Mikey holds on to P2. I think Mikey will take home P2. Is it going to be a final corner run from Labe? A drag race to the line perhaps? No, it is not. Wagner takes a checkered flag. Mikey P2, Valorio P3, and Labe P4. Hard-fought racing from all of them. Mansueto will bring home P5. Harris will bring home P6. Caligari will bring home P16. Fernandez P7. DeHaro will bring home P8. But we've got a 3-way battle for position behind Ewer, Young, and Elizondo. Elizondo managed to fight his way up to P11. Young wants to find a way past Ewer as they come out of the final corner. It will not happen. DeHaro takes P8. Ewer will take P9. Young P10. And Elizondo P11. Craters, when he comes to the line, will bring home P12. Veldkamp will bring home P13. Merkel P14. Casebool P17. Bahena P18. out of Lodge Corner for Veldkamp. And over the crest across the line, P13 for Veldkamp. Merkel in the number 97 will bring home P14 in the Aston Martin. A bit of damage on the nose of that Aston as well. And is Case Bull out of fuel? Is the car dead? It is not running, and I think it's out of fuel. And just trying to coast to the line. I don't think he'll make it. Needs someone to get out there and push. And he will continue to roll. Knows he's not going to make it. Will stop and will bring it into the pit lane. Wagner takes the win in race number 2. Mikey, P2, Valorio, P3, Labe, P4, Mansueto, P5, Harris, P6, Fernandez, P7, Daharo, P8, Ewer, P9, Young, P10, Elizondo, P11, Craters, P12, Veldkamp, P13, Merkel, P14, Norman, P15, Caligari, P16, Casebool, P17, Mahana, P18. And for the Holy Grail class, Valorio takes the win in race 2, Labe P2, Mansueto P3, Fernandez P4, Ewer P5, Veldkamp P6, Caligari P7, and Bahena P8. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Don't go anywhere. We are going to find somebody to raid. And I hope you all enjoy the broadcast. That battle for P2 in race 2 was an absolutely awesome one. Thank you all for joining in tonight, and I will see you all next week.